Hello and welcome to the Wonder in the Weeds show. I'm your host, Cristie Ritz-King, and I am excited that you are here. So this week's Weeds, I'm really going to spend most of my time today on the Wonder because I've just been kind of dying to talk about it. But I will tell you how I got here, which is really what today's Weeds are. They're probably your same weeds. There's just so much heaviness in the world with, we just got through a July 4th holiday, which here in the US is supposed to be this like patriotic event. It's 250 years since the beginning of the country, but it just felt really like loaded with all kinds of other not very fun things. Like I just wasn't feeling terribly patriotic in a like global sense because, this country is a problem. Our leadership's a problem. It was not built on these sort of like pure principles that we were taught when we were young. And so I just didn't really feel like in much of a celebratory mood. And then on a smaller, like more personal scale, 4th of July used to be this time where I like loaded my kids in the car, bright and early in the morning. My husband and I would drive them to the beach and we would literally be at the beach for like 16 hours. We'd get there as early as we possibly could. We'd set up for the day. All of our friends that were in that same area of the beach with us, we would barbecue and we would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. And then we would stay through the fireworks, everybody in sweatshirts and, bundled up on the beach together. And we did that from the times our kids were really little until, I don't know, we stopped going probably when they were like in high school. And so not only are we nowhere near a beach, but we don't even really know anybody in the area to have any kind of 4th of July celebration with. So not that I was like itching to go anywhere, but, it was sort of just another reminder that we're so new here and we're so sort of like disconnected from people and things. And it was that sort of that disconnectedness is the weeds right now. It's that idea that like, I don't know, I've been feeling a little burned out lately on trying, which sounds really funny, but I feel like I moved here almost a year ago and I've spent like literally almost every day trying to figure out how to connect with people in my area, whether it's through volunteering or trying new sports or trying new activities. I've joined like 800 book clubs. I feel like all I have is homework all the time. I just have been feeling really like just lately, we had some family visit. And so once they left, it sort of felt like this kind of come down of, I really don't have anybody here. And I'm really tired of doing all this sort of extroversion stuff that, it doesn't come naturally to me. And it doesn't really feel like it's paying off in the sense that like I've met a lot of really great people, but I haven't really connected with it very many or any for that matter. So needless to say, the weeds were just sort of me feeling the heaviness of like the world and just my own like personal changes and stuff too. And in those moments is usually when I start to try to look for, okay, what's good? And what has been present a lot lately, but I didn't necessarily recognize as the wonder is sports, specifically two things. The World Cup, which is happening right now, which my youngest who is home with us is like super into and has been super into. When we lived in Jersey and we thought that we were going to be near to World Cup games, we were like scheming and planning years ago how to get tickets to go. Not the easiest thing in the world, but we were like, maybe we'll just maybe go stand outside a venue or whatever. We just thought like we have this proximity, we need to like make it happen. And then we moved and that wasn't an option anymore, but he's home for the summer and really into all of the games, including like the knockout rounds early or the group rounds early, which is like stages of the tournament that I don't usually follow much because it's a lot. But I did a thing on Instagram where I talked about how I was just so desperate to spend time with him that I was like, I would watch like whatever, Cote d'Ivoire or like, those kind of games that I didn't have any interest in really just to like hang out with him. But not only has it been a fun thing for us to do together, but I've just really enjoyed the way that it's sort of taken over the world. And like, again, at a time where most of when you open your phone to read the newspaper, read the news or watch social media or anything like that, at a time where like a lot of that is bad and depressing and not unifying, the World Cup has really felt like this thing that has transcended a lot of that. And there's, I'm like, I find myself daily almost like crying over some video I've watched about either a family who's like walking to a watch party and gets stopped on the street by somebody who gives them tickets to the actual game, or like, at the end of the Mexico-England match where Mexico lost in Mexico, there was a couple like negative reports of Mexican fans, but then the large majority of what I was seeing was England fans talking about how amazing the Mexican fans were even after they lost, about like celebrating with them and just, the spirit of the game and the spirit of the fans, the like global fans. Soccer is a little like hockey in the sense that like the fans don't always have I should say football. And I'm thinking mostly like the European and not even European, like the UK, the England leagues. Like they don't have great reputations as being the most welcoming and kind fans. They're really diehard and rabid for their own team. But, they don't have great reputations historically for being like, it's not like a kind sport. And so the fact that I'm seeing a lot of kindness and a lot of people just really genuinely excited for one another and for the teams and getting into it, everybody sort of picked one. I have this for a woman I used to know from New York is putting herself for whatever reason in a Brazil jersey recently. I don't think she's any ties, but that's the team she's decided. We were all sort of gung ho for Mexico because where I raised my kids, the town I raised my kids is like they went to school like with majority probably kids from Mexico. Like it's just a very heavily Mexican populated town. And then the place where we went to the beach is like a heavily Brazilian Portuguese town. And so, everybody sort of has a reason. It has felt like since we moved away from there that we are like really into the Mexico team now. So anyway, my point is we've all just found reasons and ways. I mean, we all like my family, but also like my extended family and people on the street. And friends of mine that I see, now I see their like internet stories and social media stories about watching the games and cheering for teams. And some people are even getting to go to the games. And it just feels like this unifier at a time where there isn't a lot of that in the world. And so, and it's so nice because on a global scale, that's happening. The New York Knicks won for the first time in, I don't know, something crazy, 40 years, 50 years, something like that. But really what was kind of fun, and I'm not a big NBA fan. I'm not a fan at all, actually, of the NBA. We lived there for 17 years and I know a lot of people who were Knicks fans. And so I was interested in the Knicks winning because of them. But like, I didn't really have any interest in the team prior to, but we all got super into the finals because it was this kind of like underdoggy, like nobody expected them to be there. Nobody expected them to get that far. Nobody expected them, like the star of the team is a little bit older and a little bit, not sort of your sort of typical NBA star. Also, they seem to be maybe like really kind and nice men, which isn't always the case with pro athletes these days. So again, it just gave us a thing to sort of cling to and not only connect as a family, but like connect with the world. We watched the joy of New York City for a week and a half before, during, and after the playoffs. And, the president showed up for one game and it was like, no one wanted him there. And it like threatened to ruin the experience, but New Yorkers refused to let that happen. They ended up losing that game, but still then they had this amazing comeback the next game. Like it just was like all of these almost like Disney movie type storylines that were going through this. And it was such a great experience, even from afar. And again, a little bit of a homesick, like this is the formerly local team. And so it was just fun. It was fun for, I don't know, 8 days between the like semifinal round into the finals and the 5 games of the finals. It was just a good time and a great escape in some ways. And so that brings me to sort of the meat of what I want to talk about, which is, I said that when we moved here, I tried to figure out like, what's my place here? What do I do now that none of my kids really need me on a day-to-day basis? It's like, what am I, like, who even am I? I sort of had to like remind myself, what am I into? What am I not? I've been playing pickleball. I've been playing golf. I've been going to the gym more often. I've been, trying to decide from a work perspective how to do what I want to do next. And but really what I wanted was like, now that I have this time, this like gift of time that I didn't have when I had 3, younger humans in the house that I was responsible for on a day-to-day basis. Now that they're not here anymore in the same way, what do I want to do with my time? Like that's a huge gift that I've gotten back. So for all you young moms out there, I promise there comes a day where you're like, my days they're just stretch ahead of me. I make it sound like I have nothing to do, which is not true, but it kind of feels that way in the beginning when you're used to like your whole entire schedule being dictated by other people's schedules. When you don't have to do that anymore on a day-to-day basis, it really does feel like you're gaining like heaps and heaps and heaps of time. And so I've really been kind of trying to tune in and pay attention to like, what do I want to do with it? And so I've done some volunteer things. I've reached out and like I said, joined a million book clubs. But 3 years ago, I think, my youngest, when we were still in the New York area, I noticed like, I don't even know how it started. Actually, I think all of it started. Let me go way back. I'll give you a little bit of a history of this. Way back, my oldest sister and the sister that's 2 ahead of me were huge women's college basketball fans. Actually, my oldest sister is just a women's basketball. She played, pre-Title IX. She played basketball in college. She coached basketball. Like, she's just a basketball fan, full stop. But, she's 20 years older than I am. So for most of her life, there wasn't a women's basketball other than school, high school, college. And so in 1990, whatever, 9, I think, when the WNBA, or 898, when the WNBA started a team in Washington, the Mystics came to Washington. I don't think they were the beginning of the WNBA, but they were early on in that. She got tickets. She got season tickets, and I went to a couple games with her. And, we took my little nephew to a couple games back in the day. And, it was exciting. It was exciting to watch her watch this happen. But then in full honesty and disclosure, like, I didn't really pay much attention after that. We moved away. I'm not sure she kept the tickets for much longer. We moved away. I wasn't super into the WNBA. I was like tangentially aware of its existence and sort of women's college, but not really. I was really more into men's college. And then a couple years, maybe a year or so before the pandemic, my immediate family, and then my older sister, my older brother, met us in Florida for like a spring break week. And it happened to coincide with the women's college basketball Final Four, I think. And my brother and sister were totally into it. So they got us all watching it, including my kids at the time. And, it was South Carolina, I think. And I can't remember at the time who else was in it, but it was like a couple like big name coaches that I remembered from back in the day when my oldest sister was talking about it. And then some like up and coming players that were on the teams that it was a whole different style of basketball than I had remembered from the late 90s when I went to those WNBA games. It was fast. It was exciting. It was just really fun to watch. And such great stories. Like one of the coaches I think was either pregnant or had just had a baby and was back. And like the baby was like, her husband was holding the baby in the stands. Like it was my first sort of like glimpse of like women leading in sports was kind of new for me. Not as an athlete. As an athlete, I obviously experienced that. Well, I shouldn't even say that. Only a handful of my coaches over the years were women. Most of my coaches were still men. But like, I'd obviously experienced women playing sports at a higher level because I played. And so I knew that it was possible, but I just didn't, like, I was never a fan of sports in that same way, women's sports specifically in that same way. So anyway, all this is to say to you, my kids kind of got hooked a little bit then. And then a few years ago, when it was just my youngest home, when the other two were off in college, my youngest and I kind of bonded over the WNBA. At that time, the New York Liberty was making a run for the championships, and we were living in that area. And I thought, oh, this is the only New York team I'm allowed to root for. So we moved to New York, the New York area. We moved to Jersey from the Washington, D.C. area. And so if you know anything about professional sports, Washington football, and I was an Orioles baseball fan, and I was a Washington Caps fan. You don't root for any New York teams if you are those three things. Washington football is never going to root for the New York Giants. Not allowed. Wasn't allowed in my house. Couldn't even be. I was like secretly excited for them when they would win things because I knew so many people who loved them. But you can't root for them. You definitely can't root for Philadelphia. And that was the other sort of close-ish team. And never would you be able to root for the New York Rangers hockey. Never would you be. And like, I didn't care enough about the Devils. I still was a Caps fan. So I kind of lost a little bit of, I wasn't allowed to root for local teams. And I say wasn't allowed, like no one was stopping me, but like you're born a Washington fan. You're not going to root for New York teams. I mean, my New York friends all respected it, so don't worry. But this New York Liberty team, and actually at that time, Gotham FC, the soccer team, the women's soccer team, I was like, I could root for them. Like they're local and they're good, because at that time the Knicks weren't good and the Rangers weren't great anymore. Like there weren't even good local teams to compel me to root for them. And so my son and I started really paying attention to the New York Liberty. And in that championship, the Liberty won and they beat the Minnesota Lynx. So whatever, fast forward to our move and we're here, and I have to kind of like quietly, the very first thing I did, almost very first, like we were here in August, my oldest daughter arrived a couple weeks later in September, and she and I went, like, I think maybe the first week she lived here, we got tickets to a Minnesota Lynx playoff game for that season. My son was so angry. He felt like I was like betraying our New York Liberty. But I thought, I'm moving here to Minnesota. Who cares who you root for? Like, it's not like it's any threat to my Washington roots to root for the Vikings or the Timberwolves or any of that stuff. But there was this weird, like, well, how can you be a Lynx fan if we're a Liberty fan? And I had to kind of remind him, I was sort of only a Liberty fan for like 18 months. And so it's not like I still root for them, but not like I'm not a diehard. I do love them. They're a great team. But I really fell in love with the Lynx when I got here. And so we went to this playoff game. We had a great We had such an incredible time. Okay. We had a great time. And so I kind of thought like, hey, it's really easy in and out. Like it's not like the New York area at all where you really can't get to sports events from Jersey so easily, nor does it cost $1 jillion, which is what it does to see any kind of professional sporting event in New York. Is like you have to sell a kidney to get there. So these are not, it's not cheap, but it's also not outrageous. And so I thought I'm going to get some tickets to a couple games. And I ended up buying tickets to a few games, the Liberty game, obviously, because I can take my son, and a couple other like the Aces, like games that we wanted to see as a family. And as I'm doing this, as I'm buying all these and looking to see like what it's all going to total up to, I realize I can get myself a season ticket to this team for as much or just maybe a little bit more money than the few games that I was already going to buy for all of us. So that's what I did. I decided that's what I'm going to do, is be a supporter of women's sports and go to as many games as I possibly can and sort of throw myself into that as a way of sort of filling that time, but also remembering like who I am is somebody who grew up going to basketball games. I mean, we had season tickets for the University of Maryland men's team. We would occasionally go to University of Maryland women's games because we lived really close and they were really good at the time. I stopped playing basketball in like the 10th grade, I think. But technically, I was on the team in 9th grade, but I shouldn't have been. Basketball is one of those sports that for me physically, I kind of capped out in the 8th grade and everybody suddenly was taller than me and faster than me and all of the things better than me than I was. I was one of those kids that was really good when everybody was little. And then the minute we all kind of grew up, it was like, oh yeah, I'll be a fan of this sport now, not a player of the sport. But since going to that first game, that first playoff game, and sort of feeling the sort of the like electrical nature of the place, a few things have struck me about specifically the WNBA. So I talked earlier in this episode about the magic of sports and the sort of unifying nature of the World Cup and the unifying nature of the Knicks win and the escapism that those things have given us in this otherwise really awful time. Yeah, the Mexico game happened to coincide, the Mexico-England game happened to coincide with some news out of our former hometown of, just really ugly ICE involvement and things that don't need to happen, and my neighbors being really worried for themselves and scared for themselves. And so you're like holding that like tragedy and trauma at the same time as you're just like rooting with all your might for this team because you just want them to have something. Like I want there to be some good and some joy in the lives of these folks. And these former neighbors that I loved, like I want their team to win. And same thing with the Knicks. Like I felt like New York has had such a rough, 5 years since COVID really, and all of the mess that came with that. And now everybody sort of hates them because they have this mayor that they're trying to vilify in the world. And then to have this like scrappy team win in spite of, a million things stacked against them, and just watching the city and the real Knicks fans, like, yes, you'll see all the celebrities online, but like the real Knicks fans are like real New Yorkers. They're New Yorkers who like, they're in the Bronx and Queens and they're born and raised Knicks fans. And so to be able to watch them celebrate, like that is unifying. That joy is contagious. That moment of being able to like look at what's good in the world instead of all the stuff that's not going so well in the world. In both cases, the World Cup and the Mexico game specifically, and then these Knicks wins, that was such a like jolt of energy and a jolt of goodness and hope that I realized like that's part of why I decided to go all in on the Lynx and on women's basketball. So that first playoff game, my oldest daughter and I went to, and my sister, we lost my oldest sister a few years ago. She died actually almost exactly 3-4 years ago. That's bad, right? This is the weird thing about grief, is that it feels both like it just happened and it feels like years and years and years have passed, that I'm not great on specific times and dates and how long things have been. Needless to say, I'm still feeling that loss. And when we walked into that first playoff game last year, this is going to sound super cheesy, but she was there. I have never felt closer to her since losing her than I did standing in that arena that night. And not because it was her team and not because she cared and not even because she and I talked about basketball that much in the last years of her life, but remembering who she was and what she stood for. She also happened to be a sports journalist before she got too sick to write, but I felt her in that arena that night so much so that I cried. My daughter was crying. Like we were both teary-eyed through this game. And it wasn't even because they were winning. It was just the energy of the place was unbelievable. I mean, the crowd obviously was wild because it was a playoff game, but having now gone to a few other games, regular season games, they're the same at every game. These Minnesota fans love their Lynx. And add on to that. So that night it was really about, I'm like feeling her presence here, and that's kind of cool. It's the same reason I went to church for a really long time after my mom died, because I just felt my mom's presence in that church. It's like, oh, I just feel her presence here. And so this is feeling so special to me. But then we went to a couple more and I realized it was even bigger than that. Yes, it is a place where I can like feel the spirit of my sister. And like, I just wish she could have seen how big this sport has gotten, that like how many people were, I mean, they filled the stadium. When I used to go with her to the early days of the Mystics, the Washington Mystics, it was like they put like those blackout curtains in the upper bowl of the arena, and like barely even the lower was, I'm not even sure it was sold out. It felt a little bit like when you would go to a smaller school's basketball game or you know, like a high school game in a college arena. Like it sort of felt like that, like this team was playing, but the stands were not built for it. Fast forward to this game that I went to, this playoff game that I went to, the place was packed. It was every seat was filled, and there were people sort of milling around on the concourse levels and stuff too. Like it was just super crowded, and it was, you know, as hype and as energetic as any men's sporting event I've ever been to. And so I really wished she could have been there for that. And yet at the same time, it sort of felt like she was there for that. So then come this season, when I decided to get tickets to it, I thought, well, my son is home. And as much as he, you know, was mad at me at first for becoming a Lynx fan and not a Liberty fan, or choosing to be a Lynx fan over a Liberty fan, he still loves to come to the games. He appreciates the game. So he's been my kind of companion for most of the games that we've gone to. And the very first time we went in, I was like, look, I'm not going to like try to turn you into a Lynx fan. I get it. Like, you're a Liberty fan. You get to be a Liberty fan. He's got the Liberty swag and all that stuff. And I was like, but you know, I hope you'll come and enjoy the games. And then we get there and we like cross the threshold of the Target Center. And he kind of looks around like, you know, he's getting some of that energy too. And I was like, yeah, just try not to fall in love. Good luck not falling in love with this team, with this arena, with these people, with these fans. And sure enough, he came out of it with a new Lynx hat to go with his Liberty hat. And, you know, I think he will be, he walked out even and he was like, I mean, I could root for two teams. I was like, yeah, you can root for two teams. It's okay. So he experienced that same sort of magnetism and like electricity that's so exciting and fun about it. But the wonder part to me that I noticed that was like even bigger than I thought is kind of twofold. One, it's like this exciting thing of like live sports are just fun. They're just fun and they're exciting. The crowd is so engaged in this stuff. It's definitely the NBA and the WNBA, I've noticed, have been to both now, are very much like fan experience things. Like there's constant music playing. There's constant like chants in the middle. There's constant like over the speaker kind of thing. So it's high energy for, you know, 2 hours. And it's really only, I think it's only technically supposed to be an hour-long game, but 40-minute game, but it's not. It takes forever. So, you know, there's this energy that you get to sort of escape for 2 hours into this like pure positive space. And it's just different. Like, I don't know if it's different because it's women. You know, I've been to football games. I've been to soccer games. I've been to baseball games. I've been to a bunch of men's sports games, and they're fun, but there's always this like tinge of, especially football games, there's this like tinge of like aggression in the fans themselves underneath. Like, I remember when we would go to Washington football games when my kids were little, I would think, I could never bring my kids to this. Now, we've been to professional baseball games. They're perfectly fine. Everybody's lovely at those. But like football and basketball are like those high intensity sports. It's just a different vibe. And I don't know if it's like the nature of the sport or it's the fact that it's men. But when you go into a WNBA game, first of all, the teams themselves love each other. Like, they will fight to the death on the court, but as much as the media tries to drum up this sort of, you know, rivalries and hatred and this person hates this person and this person's out to get this person, that actually doesn't exist on the court. At every Lynx game we've been to this season, there's been somebody from the opposing team that was like a former Lynx at one point, or like there's a coach that used to be a coach for the Lynx or whatever. Anyway, my point is they welcome them back. They're like, welcome home to so-and-so who's literally here to play for the other team. But like the crowd goes crazy. The players very clearly all like each other prior to the game. As soon as the game starts, all bets are off. But prior to the game, there's just a different energy to it of welcoming and respect and just, it's just good. It's just good so that when they are super physical and, sometimes a little too physical on the court, you don't have that like negativity that you sometimes get in other sports. Trust, people can get mad at players and they can get mad at refs and they can get mad at everything. But a lot of the like angry, hateful discourse, it just doesn't exist in the actual arena itself. It might be online, it might be on podcasts, it might be on sports shows, but it doesn't really feel like it exists in that space. Also, as a woman, it's like one of the first professional sporting events I have walked into where I feel like it's mine. Like it's not that I haven't been welcome at men's games, but it feels like, I don't know, I always felt like, not that I didn't belong there, I felt like I belonged there, but almost like people sort of look around like, almost like it's a test. Like, how much do you know? Do you deserve to have these seats? Do you deserve to be here? Are you cheering enough? Are you paying enough attention? Are you whatever? Like, it just always felt like as a woman in a men's sporting event, there was like a different judgment on you. Like an energy. I don't want to say like any specific person was, but it did feel like a specific energy shift when it's men's sports versus these women's basketball games. And I do know a lot about the game of basketball. I've noticed this too, because now that I'm raising this, this sports fan son and my husband, who has always been like this, they're like stats people, and they know, like, they'll be able to tell you like what the person's field goal percentage was from last season versus this season. My son specifically knows like the trajectory of every player from through every team, the like history of all of it. I don't even know. I'll have to be like, wait, who did this team used to be? Because there's been some movement in the WNBA and where they went and all this stuff, and he has it all cataloged in his brain. I don't. And for the longest time, I actually started to believe the hype that meant that I wasn't like a quote unquote real sports fan. It was like, well, you don't know, 10 seasons back that this guy had an injury and wasn't able to play, or he was a redshirt freshman, or he's whatever. Like my husband and son specifically, because we're the ones that have been together for a long time, has so much of that knowledge in his brain that I let that affect me. And I let that make me think I wasn't sort of allowed to be a fan or to talk about sports in the same way. And I kind of just decided this year, you're going to have to bleep this out, but I just decided this year, like, fuck it. Like, he doesn't own sports. Like he doesn't. And just because I don't consume it the same way he does, and just because I don't, like jaw through it the same way he does, doesn't mean that I am not entitled to it. Also, one of the things I hated was that the NFL did this like pink and like bedazzled. I think Aaron Andrews is the one who does the like line of women's NFL gear. And I was always like, why can't I just have a t-shirt like everybody else has a t-shirt? Why does mine have to look like I'm girly? Like pink is not a team color. Why do things exist in pink? Like, this is a rant I could go on for days, but I used to get so resentful of like, why does it have to be like a fan and a girl fan? Like, why can't we just be fans just because we do it differently? Or like, you guys think you sort of own the sport. Why can't I? And I fell for it. I bought right into it of like, well, I guess I'm not a real fan because A, I don't want to wear the pink shit. And B, I'm not like constantly thinking about the sport, the game, the team, the whatever. Next season, like my husband will get to January or February, whenever the Super Bowl is, and he's already, forget the Super Bowl. He gets to the end of regular season because our team hasn't made the Super Bowl in so long. He gets to the end of regular season and he's already thinking about like the draft and what's going to happen in the next season. And I was just like, I guess I'm not a real fan because I don't act like that. But then I went to this WNBA game, playoff game. I started to get into the team. I remembered that I know the game. Like, I understand when people are good at things, when they're not good at things, why they're good at things, why they're not good at things, what the team needs, what the team's missing. Like, I actually understand the game. And I forgot that for a long time because I don't know, sports in my house was for the boys. And so I just sort of stood back like, well, I can't have these same conversations because I don't know all these stats. So I guess I'll just leave it to them and I don't know what, watch tennis. I don't know. No, because my son knows all that crap too. But anyway, my point is, I'm sure you're listening to this. If you're still listening to this, God bless you, because this is really just so self-indulgent. This whole entire episode is me just getting to the meat of being able to talk about why I love the WNBA so much. But there's been a little like identity stuff in there too, of remembering like, oh yeah, I'm a huge basketball fan, and the way that I am a fan, the way that I show up as a fan, the way that I consume sports doesn't look the same as the way my husband and son do. But that doesn't make me any less of a fan. I don't need to do it the same way they do it in order to enjoy the game and love going. And so that's what I've sort of taken away from it. And so now I'm so into it. Obviously I had to go get the merch. I've got a hat and a t-shirt and a couple different t-shirts, and I'm super into all the players. I do not follow them on social media for the most part because that feels a little stalkery to me. But I have swapped out a bunch of my like political podcasts for sports podcasts. I think I mentioned this on another show that I've started listening to a couple different WNBA podcasts and like really understanding, like now I really get my husband literally every single morning listens to a sports show from back in DC, a guy from, I think, DC Media who does a sports show. And I'm like, oh, I understand why he does this. Like I really like listening to their sort of thoughts on the game. And I listen to one that's specifically just a Lynx podcast and one that's two women discussing the WNBA in general. And then I have a third one that I listen to sometimes that's just women's sports, which is kind of exciting too. But I don't listen to that one as much because I don't know as much. So I really am focused right now on basketball stuff. But I really enjoy listening to it because it's like touching a different part of my brain than the other stuff, the global crisis and political crisis that we're in. I still listen to those, but this is not just an escape, but almost like a different thing for me to focus on that re-energizes me to take on the fight of all the other things. And it's like a thing that I'm interested in, which I didn't really have for a long time as a parent. I had the things that I had to do as a parent. I had the things that I had to do as a student. I had the things that I had to do as a therapist. And then I read books, but like I wasn't interested in those books so much as they were like a palate cleanser at the end of my day. Now I'm like, I'm super into it. I'm into the season. I'm into all the other teams. I'm into like the playoff run. I'm into the injury reports. I'm into all of that stuff. And I also know about myself that once the season ends, I'm going to be done until next season. I'm not like my son and my husband who are just like constantly consuming information about sports, because the thing that I like is the energy and the excitement of the game itself. And like, then what's going to happen with the upcoming games. So I'm not so much tied. I mean, obviously I want my team to win, but I'm not so much tied to the like championshipness of it all. It's more like I really love being in the arena for the games. It's just good. It's good stuff. It like fills a part of me that I really need filled in order to do all the other work that is hard and tough and takes things away sometimes. And there's something about it being women on the court, in the stands, largely on the sidelines as coaches. Not as many as I would like, but some. That not only does it feel like it's welcoming and it's a place that I belong, but it feels like a place that anyone belongs. Like you are welcome there if you want to root for the team. Or you're welcome there if you want to root for the opposing team, because we're just so excited that you're rooting for a team. We want you there, which I have never experienced anywhere else. It's a really great, coming back to the other stuff I was talking about, it's a really great unifying, connected 2 hours of the day, of the week, of the however many times you get to go in a season. And then back at home, it's a great way that my family and I connect and unify. My oldest daughter has gotten super into them. She didn't even think she liked sports. And then I took her to that one. Well, in fairness, she went to a school that was big with the football, had a big football program. So she definitely got into sports as a fan in college. And then I took her to this playoff game and she went all in on the Lynx. And now is like, the only reason she's not going to the games with me recently is because she's in the show that rehearses at night. And so she hasn't been able to go. But I think they're going to start fighting over tickets pretty soon because her show is going to be over at the end of the month. And I have a feeling she's going to be fighting with her brother over my second ticket. So anyway, it's just, again, this show was more wonder than weeds because I've just been so consumed with all the good stuff that sports brings and being a fan of sports brings and the unification and the connection and all of that stuff that not just, NBA basketball and the World Cup, but also our WNBA experience and being Mystics /Lynx /Liberty fans. So if you haven't checked out any games, I suggest you do. They keep expanding the league, and so there's going to be even more teams in your area. If there isn't one in your area yet, there probably will be soon. Some other really fun teams to check out are the Valkyries. The Warriors are there too. They're great fun. The Las Vegas Aces are great fun. Everybody knows the Indiana Fever because that's where Caitlin Clark plays, and Caitlin Clark is the reason for a lot of people's entry into the game. There's also a lot of controversy around her and around everybody who plays against her, and it's sort of tired and old and really just a media story more than an actual league story. The officiating's terrible, but it's talked about every single week how terrible it is, so hopefully it'll get better. But the game itself is great fun, and the players are incredible. And they just had this whole collective bargaining agreement at the end of last year where they upped their salary, so they're actually getting paid a living wage, so they don't have to go have 10 other jobs in addition to playing professional basketball. It's just fun. It's great fun. It's such a good excuse right now to have something joyful and hopeful to add into your life with all the other stuff is going wrong. So as the World Cup sort of, comes to a conclusion with fewer and fewer and fewer teams to root for and inevitably ends, tune into the WNBA. It goes through the fall, and it's just good fun. And it's women doing exciting, amazing, wonderful things. And we all need a little bit more of that in our life. So, all right, there's your wonder for the week. Women in sports. So for this week's reading, watching, listening to, obviously I just talked about women's sports and the World Cup and the Knicks. So you kind of know what I've been watching recently. But also we just watched a show, and I'm going to forget what it's called. It's Harlan Coben is an author who writes these sort of like, not serial mysteries. Like there's some of them are the same person, but I would call them like they're suspenseful, but they're also kind of, they're like twisty-turny mystery / whodunit murdery type things. And we just finished one called I Will Find You. And so he's an author who writes these books. And I started reading them a million years ago but I don't know exactly how. I didn't look this up, but somewhere along the way, Netflix picked him up and started making all of these same books and stories into TV shows, but they were always set in like England or Scotland or like some non-American, definitely not New Jersey place. But the most recent one is supposed to be in Boston, but I'm actually not sure where it was filmed because I'm pretty sure every single actor in it is either British or Australian. But it's a really cool 8-episode series, I think, about a guy who's accused of killing his kid and is in prison for that, and then ends up breaking out because maybe the kid is actually still alive. And so he breaks out and tries to find and goes to try to find the kid. I'm not going to tell you anything more because it's lots of twists and turns. And just when you think you know who did it or what's going to happen, it shifts a little bit. So it's great fun. Good acting. Pretty sure it was Netflix. It's called I Will Find You. And I saw it on Netflix and was like, oh, another Harlan Coben. Great. And then my hairdresser suggested it. So I was like, okay, I'm all in. If she says it's good. It's good. So go try to find that. Reading right now, I'll let you know. I'm in the middle of a book right now. I'm literally in 3 book clubs. I told you guys I was really trying to connect with people, right? I joined one in my neighborhood. I joined one at the place where I play golf. And I joined one at this bar called A Bar of Their Own, which is I haven't even gone to this yet, but it's called A Bar of Their Own. And it's a bar for just women's sports. Incredible. I love you, Minneapolis. And they are doing the reason I found out about it is because Abby Wambach showed up via like Zoom to their most recent book club meeting because they were reading her book. So they do all books that are like somehow women's sports adjacent. So we're currently reading one about the invention of the sports bra. So I am in the middle of 3, but I don't have enough to tell you about any of them yet. But that just means you got to listen next time because I'm sure I'll have some great books to talk to you about. And listening to, I actually have been listening to a lot of country lately because I don't really like new country. I don't like we call it bro-y country. I'm not a big fan of that, but there's a couple women that I really like. And so I've been listening to a little bit of that. It just feels like when you're in a golf cart, country music's like the music that works. So I've been listening to a little bit of that lately. So that's all I got. So really just go watch the show. I Will Find You, and I'll have better books and music and or something to listen to next time we talk. All right. Again, thanks for listening. Don't forget we're on Substack. If you're not listening to me there, you can go over to Substack, and I tend to write some sort of essay once a week and some sort of like reflection on the pod once a week too. So that usually comes after like a little note I usually listen to it and then I'm like, oh, I meant to say this, or, oh, I should have said this instead, or this also got me thinking about this. So it's just kind of a reflection piece. And I'm hoping in the fall to start doing some lives and some more community building stuff. So check us out over on Substack. Give us a review wherever you're listening to this. We would really appreciate it. Thanks so much. See you next week. Until then, keep looking for the wonder in the weeds.